Einen wunderschönen guten Abend, liebe Frau Staatsministerin, liebe Panelisten und natürlich auch an Sie, liebe Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmer. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Digital Leaders Roundtable zur Agrarwirtschaft der Zukunft. Eine Kooperationsanveranstaltung zwischen dem Bitkom und der hessischen Landesvertretung, aus der wir heute live...
Representation of Hessen with a live event today. What is the current stage of digitalization in agriculture? How can we use digital tools to achieve our objectives? And how can we achieve supply security and make the sector more resilient? These are the topics that we would like to discuss tonight. My name is Sabrina Caroli. I'm head of charge of European digital policy at Bitkom, and I'm pleased to welcome you here to our interesting evening program and lead you to the panel discussion. At the beginning, it's my particular honor to give the floor to State Secretary Becker of Hessen, who has sent us a video message. Since February 2022, he has been the State Secretary for Europe and is going to start our evening program. Welcome, State Secretary Becker. We're looking forward to your welcome words. Dear MEPs, MEP Lins, dear Mr. Pinto, Antunes, Mr. Veltkamp, Mr. Migende, Mr. Schmal, colleagues, ministers, Professor Sinemus, Mrs. Hinz, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome you to the third Digital Leaders Roundtable in the representation of Hesse in Brussels, to this virtual event, on an important topic and interesting topic, the digitalization of agriculture from a European perspective. Tracking in the cow shed, pesticides by apps, or the harvest using robots. Digitalization has entered agriculture a long time ago and is used intensively. Today's roundtable will be dealing with the topic that shows impressively how broadly digitalization has had its effects on agriculture. And also Hessian farmers use digitalization in many of their tasks and a lot of their work. The potential is clear when we see that in Hessen alone more than 16,000 farms exist, and they cover 40% of our state, and their contribution is 2 billion euros to our domestic product. The digital transformation in agriculture is a European topic because many rules that are the basis for using technology, starting from the legal framework for artificial intelligence, data protection, but also developing a satellite internet. These are topical subjects which are being negotiated at the EU level. And Hessen would like to make an active contribution at the European level in Brussels. And this engagement, this commitment is not only in our self-interest, it's our conviction. We firmly believe that we need to contribute innovation and work. More than 2/3 of political decisions that influence everyday life, the everyday life of people also in Hessen, are taken in Brussels, and therefore it's important to be present there and to be engaged, be involved. Today, we see this also in the matter of the activities in agriculture, but this applies also to many other sectors too, and particularly for the EU agricultural policy and digital transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the war in Ukraine does not stop for agriculture, and already today we hear warnings of too little wheat coming from the Ukraine, also from Russia because of the sanctions. So therefore there are lacks in the supply of the European Union. So what about countries like Africa, which hardly have any other possibility to supply themselves with wheat? In many other parts of the world, these shortages have even graver consequences. Therefore, topics like local production, safeguarding the food supply in the age of digitalization is even more important, and all the more important is the discussion today with you, and I wish you and us all a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, State Secretary Becker, for these motivating words of opening digitalization of agriculture as a European topic. That will keep us busy tonight. State Secretary Oliver Kons is also with us for a greeting. He has been the State Secretary for Environment and Climate Protection and Agriculture and Consumer Protection in Hessen. I would like to give him the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, my car talks to me. My heating system knows where I am when I go to the restaurant. I only get in if I show my phone and where my digital vaccination pass is recorded. Digitalization is everywhere, and it doesn't stop at the farm gate. German farmers in Germany were always forced and were always pioneers in top technology. That's linked to the high production costs that we have. The farmers in Europe, more than in other countries, are forced to achieve productivity gains, great productivity gains. And agriculture has always done that. Digitalization is going to support these productivity gains in the future. That's a huge opportunity for the farmers, but not only from the point of view of productivity and yields, but also for the climate and for a sustainable development and biological diversity. There are many possibilities to apply modern technology, digital technology today. If the administration talks about digitalization, they start with their own procedures. We do that with our online legislation, online access legislation, and try to open our procedures, which are complex and becoming more and more complex, offer these in a digital form so that farmers on the other side also have access to us digitally, can communicate with us. We've started doing so. It works fine since the first year. There's still a big potential before us, and this will make work much easier because farming today very often happens at a desk. On top of that, we offer lots of local data, and with the GeoBox, together with other German states, we set up an infrastructure where these data are made available for each plot. And in one of the projects, deep farming, we have tried how far we can go with precision farming, where we go down to the square meter and can regulate what inputs we use, so become more productive, but also become more sustainable at the same time. So you see, farming and digitalization go hand in hand. They offer lots of opportunities. We would like to use these opportunities together with the farmers. And we are pleased, we are looking forward to the digital future of agriculture. It will make the farming profession much more attractive for young people who use these technologies on an everyday basis today. So I'm pleased that you attend this meeting tonight, and I wish you all good success. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, State Secretary Konz, for this welcome. You said quite rightly, digitalization offers productivity gains in agriculture and makes a significant contribution to sustainability. You also mentioned that data use and debureaucratization is an opportunity and that we should use the opportunities. What these opportunities will look like will play a role in our subsequent discussion. But before we start with our panel discussion, it's a particular pleasure to welcome State Minister Professor Dr. Sinemus here with us, and Niklas Veltkamp, who in our introductory statement are going to set the frame for the discussion tonight. We're going to start with State Minister Professor Dr. Sinemus. Since 2019, she's been State Ministry for Digital Strategy and Development. She works in Genius GmbH for scientific communication, and is also works at the Technical University of Darmstadt. So he's very much in favor of science and innovation, and we're looking forward to her opening statement, which is going to hold here today. So I would like to give you the floor, Mrs. Sinemus. Thank you very much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, those here in an analog way present, and also those joining us virtually. I'm pleased that we can have a physical meeting here tonight, this physical leaders roundtable in our state representation, and all the more so on a topic which I have always loved, was always dear to my heart. I'm born in Darmstadt, the digital town, which was selected by Bitkom in 2017 as the digital city in Germany, the only one in Germany, and we're becoming more and more digital. My 16-year-old daughter when she goes to the Herren Garden, which is a dark park, dark garden in the city. We have light sensors who switch on the light when she comes along. But I grew up, and I look to Karsten Schmal, who will be invited to the podium later on. I'm looking to the rural area. I spent my holidays there to bring in the hay, milking cows, do all the things that the farmer needs to be able to produce these things that we need, and that is food. And then in my company history, I saw how this agriculture that I could even touch in my youth, became more and more digital. And with Mr. Migende, we have somebody who is the representative of BayWa, and they are the ones that promoted digitalization in agriculture, who have shown, for instance, at the International Green Week, the Green Fair, that agriculture is more than simply without the negative connotation, or not only managing a small farm, but it's a lot of technology that you need to look forward, and that you can improve value chains through digitalization. And to think of these things together, so our big innovation potential in agriculture, to optimize plans and use digitalization in such a way that we use as little as possible resources. Sustainability in agriculture can be developed by that. This is one topic, one area that we're going to talk about tonight. Another area, in addition to innovation, is also to be an agricultural country. And Europe is one of the 4 largest food producers in the European Union, and is the 3rd largest exporter of agricultural produce in the world. Every year we produce about 1 million people in Germany produce in 270 farms. They produce produce that is worth 50 billion euros. And the State Secretary Uwe Becker and also Oliver Kahns mentioned that in times of war, this contribution becomes more and more important. When the Ukraine as the corn chamber of Europe falls out, and if prices for oil and wheat and soybeans and maize have increased dramatically. Yesterday evening, the EU agricultural ministers decided an emergency plan to increase food production in the EU. At its core, the use of set-aside areas will be allowed to grow feed like soy and maize. Up to now, more than half of the maize was imported from the Ukraine in the EU. So we see that value chains, value creation chains are important to take into account, and that we also need to use our technical know-how, our innovation, and think of the future and think forward. And we need to do it in such a way that agriculture is sustainable and digital. And that is a fact. That's what we are for in Hessen, also in our digital strategy. I'm proud that we have a digital strategy in Hessen where future is at home, and we were able to decide it in such a way that all resources, or all my colleagues in my office said, that's the right track. This is our track. This is our way to take Hessen into the digital future. And one significant part is also agriculture, because agriculture, particularly in rural areas, we need to strengthen agriculture. We can only strengthen it by investing in topics and know-how, using innovation and using digital innovations, for instance. And we put into this report, in this strategy, we are going to support agriculture on the way to smart farming and offer new subsidies, new support to explore sustainable technological possibilities for our farms and make them and use them. Digitalization of agriculture is going to support farming methods that protect the climate and the environment, improve animal welfare, improve management, optimize management, and thereby maintain our local farming and develop it for the future. But digital infrastructure also needs to be developed in the rural areas, because we know without a good digital infrastructure, I cannot use innovation. I cannot sit on my tractor and use GPS and control the application of my pesticides using as little resources as possible. Without 5G, which is the prerequisite, I cannot do precision farming and use artificial intelligence on my plots. And that's why, on the one hand, we want to promote innovation on the one hand and also develop technology, but also the digital infrastructure, particularly in rural areas. Because for me, who grew up in the rural area, digitalization is a huge opportunity for me. Rural areas are the area of the future, and digitalization can help us. We want to support the farms, offer them more jobs, offer them more know-how, because at the end, what counts for the future is what we do for the people. Food is part of our life, as the German word says, Lebensmittel, and that we can produce them sustainably. That's why we want to apply our digital strategy, Digital Hessen, where future is at home, particularly in smart farming, in agriculture, in sustainable agriculture. We want to develop it in such a way that in the future, digitalization is for the benefit of our citizens, for all those in the countryside and in the cities, so that everybody can participate in the future, in the digitalization of Hessen, the future of Hessen. That's what we want to talk about tonight. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also pleased that we are a part of a strong Europe today and tonight in this representation of the land of Hessen. Thank you.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, State Minister. With your speech, I think you've increased our interest to the upcoming discussion with the digital strategy of Hessen. You also mentioned some very important aspects that will certainly be mentioned again tonight. You mentioned innovation, digital infrastructure. We're curious what is going to be said in the course of the discussion. Now, of course, we have our second opening statement, Niklas Veltkamp, who has joined us, who is a member of the board of Bitkom and is in charge of digitalization and innovation. Niklas, we're looking forward to your introduction, and we are curious how the agricultural economy of the future would look like and what needs to be done to achieve that. Thank you very much. State Minister Sinemus, State Secretary Becker. I need to switch off my loudspeaker. So we start again. State Minister Sinemus, State Secretary Becker, State Secretary Konz, MEP Lins, Mr. Antunes, dear panelists, dear viewers and participants locally, but also virtually. I'm very pleased. And I can say so on behalf of Bitkom, of the company Bitkom, that we are going to deal with this topic today in this event. And thank you very much to Mrs. Sinemus and your team for taking the initiative. Agriculture is clearly in a phase of change. On the one hand, they need to become more sustainable, more resilient against climate change. The objectives are very ambitious until 2030. 50% less pesticide, 20% less fertilizer is to be used. And at the same time, as was shown by this brutal awful aggression of Russia against Ukraine, we see the consequences that this has and how important agriculture is for our nutrition. It's called Lebensmittel in Germany, food. We need to realize the consequences when farmers in the Ukraine cannot plow their fields, cannot export their wheat and many other agricultural products. So the war shows us very clearly how important agriculture is and how important it is that in Europe, including Ukraine, of course, that in Europe we can feed ourselves. Food security, production of high-quality foods, that is the main task of farming. And what we're going to discuss tonight, digitalization has a key role. Digitalization can support the economy and the ecology, combine them. We've heard some examples, intelligent sensors, intelligent software that distinguish weeds from crops, pesticides can be applied more precisely, better farming techniques to reduce fertilizer, the use of fertilizer in a specific way on the field. There are many possibilities, and it's nice that everybody mentioned the opportunities in all of their statements. Farmers, and here I speak as somebody who grew up in the countryside, not in the same region as you, State Minister, but on the Lower Rhine. I know agriculture not only from the books of my daughter's books, with some pictures, romantic pictures about agriculture. Farmers have always been very innovative. We see that also in digital applications, and they're very open to the use of digital technologies. More than half of German farmers use GPS-controlled equipment. A third already applies pesticides and fertilizers by precision farming smartly. Smart farming does not always mean it used to be bigger machines in the past. There is a very broad range of digital solutions and software solutions, decision-making tools, perspective tools allow farmers, smaller farmers, and also larger farmers to analyze their plots and take the right decisions at the end of the day. Therefore, there is a basis for digital farming. And you mentioned a number of points. I'm very much pleased that the state of Hessen since 2021 is also investing in agricultural software. That's an important step. The leverage effect happens in digital developments. That happens very often. The leverage is very big if you use it on large surfaces and strategically. And maybe a few considerations for our discussion tonight. The first one is support instruments, so adjusting support instruments between for farming applications that are sustainable. Also in the eco-streams, they should be supported, including smart software applications and digital services. And the second thing, farmers are innovative. Nevertheless, it's important to further train farmers on digital technologies to create a broader understanding and also help them in choosing the right digital tools. And the third point, it was mentioned several times, are the overall conditions where we would like more unity. We all know this. 16 states in Germany plus the federal level, and today we talk about Europe, plus that's 27 different states and different opinions and different assessments. We need to be careful that the rollout of various innovation processes is not slowed down, that we work together, and that we need common efforts for soil values and data, so that the various systems and data can really be linked and can really be used. These 3 or 2 ideas for tonight. So at Bitkom, this is a core topic. On the 17th of May, we organize our Digital Farming Conference in Berlin. If you are present, or if you can combine it with a visit to Berlin, you are welcome. But now I'm looking forward to the discussion and wish us all a very interesting evening. Thank you very much to the state representation of Hessen for the good cooperation. Thank you.
Ja, einen herzlichen Dank auch an.
Thank you very much, Niklas, for these opening words. On working together, that's right. You also mentioned important aspects that we are going to pick up in our discussion, which is going to start in a second. Niklas Veltkamp is going to not accompany us in the discussion, but we have the honor that State Minister Professor Dr. Sinemus is here. She will stay with us and will just be busy discussing with us. But before I invite the other panelists to our podium, there are 2 or 3 things I'd like to say from an organizational point of view and technical remarks. The discussion will be switching between English and German, but don't be afraid. We have interpreters. It's being translated simultaneously, so none of the important discussion contents and contributions will be lost. We are going to spend the first hour in a discussion with a panel, but at the end we have enough time. We've planned enough time. If you have questions from the audience, you are invited also to ask questions, also critical questions, make comments. and giving us the honor of asking a question. And I would like to ask you, please, to use the email address that you see now and the hotline to send your questions, also for the public who is here with us today in the meeting room. And now, without much further ado, I would like to start the podium discussion right away. Tonight we have some very interesting guests I'd like to introduce now. As I said, we have 60 minutes for our intensive panel discussion on the podium before we go to the Q&A session. And I would like to welcome, of course, the State Minister and start right away. First, I would like to invite Mr. Antunes.
Also my pleasure to welcome you here. He is a member of the cabinet of Commissioner Wojciechowski. I hope I pronounced that pretty well, in the European Commission. He is in charge of the European Green Deal, smart villages, and many more topics. He has a broad and extensive experience spanning from different DGs, like the Environment Director General, the Health Directorate General, where he was also the leader of a team in charge for strategy, and he has an academic degree in international relations, environment and development from Manho University and Cambridge University. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Antunes. Weitermachen möchte ich gerne mit dem...
Now I would like to go ahead with Mr. Norbert Lins. I would invite you to come here on my right side, member of the CDO, and since 2014 member of the European Parliament, and since 2019 in the Agricultural Committee, and he has just been reconfirmed. Thank you for being here today and to discuss with us. And after the political part has been covered with Parliament, our minister, I would like to continue with Mr. Migende. You can have a seat on the left side since 98 at BayWa, company in the agricultural part with their site in Munich, and he had a lot of important positions there, and since 2015 he was responsible for the digital farming, and since 2018 the agricultural interests. He studied at Munich agriculture, where he is dividing his knowledge with the young people. Thank you very much for being here. And last but not least, we also have Mr. Karsten Schmal today with us. He is the leader of the farmers' representation, and he is an agricultural representation, and he is an agricultural engineer, and since the 90s he is also leading the whole farm of his family, and since 2016 he is responsible in the group for milk. It's very nice to have you here. And as we already said, the whole discussion is talking about agriculture and how digitalization can be used for realizing a lot of important goals and for all the challenges. But before we look at the status quo and challenges and opportunities for the future, I would like to ask one question. This goes to everybody, and it's a really short question. Now, when you think about digitization in agriculture, is there one innovative technology that you liked most? And I would like to start with our minister. Last year, I have seen a farm in Deisenheim, and they had a drone which was double as big as the place we are taking here tonight. And this drone was flying over the grapes. Where do we have grapes that fell down? And then there was connectivity with the satellite, and was looking how the situation was in other countries. And then the drone could also make precision farming utilizing the things they needed. And I hope that these and similar things can be used in a sustainable way.
Thank you, and greetings. Thanks for the invitation. Thank you for the invitation, and very welcome to have this discussion. I actually never like a lot to talk about technologies, because I think this is one part only of the debate. I think what it will be important for us in terms of this agenda will actually be all the conversation that we will need to have in terms of having more value in whatever we are doing, because this is what's innovation. It's not the technology in itself, but it's also a lot of the things around the technologies and how we use the technologies. And for me, this is one of the key parts of our discussions that I guess we will have to have as part of our debate. But if I had to choose one technology, I guess I was particularly interested or curious with one specific technology that one time was presented to me by a company in Denmark for in this case, where they actually were able to track the methane emissions from the livestock in their farms. And I thought this was an interesting technology, because a lot of the times we talk about in terms of less inputs, namely in terms of pesticides, for instance, but also nutrients. But it can go a little bit beyond this. So I was very much impressed by this technology which they had, which was also part of an app that the farmer could have, that could track and basically measure how much their livestock could emit in terms of methane.
Thank you. Herr Lins, wollen Sie vielleicht weitermachen?
Would you like to continue? For me, it was similar, like for Mrs. Sinemus, because it's a machine that is reducing the use of pesticides. We know it from the because you take the grass out and the plants that should grow. This is something that was really interesting. And thank you very much. And now I'm going to the left side. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation for tonight. And the modern technology in the external part are already written. I'm the one who is the practical person. I represent beef and milk, and what was important for me in the last few years, also in our farm in the north of Hessen, we have 200 cows, and 2 years ago we started to have a robot technique. We discussed very long. The younger boy was in favor. I had to be convinced, and I said, okay, we should anyhow give the young people the opportunity to do so. And since 2 years, we have a robot system. You practically bring everything with the robot, and only a few days after, I've seen how the animals are coping with it, and all the data you can see. And it's interesting how well animals can be with such a technique. We are as convinced that we installed yesterday 2 more robots, and I guess this had brought a lot for the well-being of the animals and of keeping peace. And as far as animals are concerned, this was very interesting. And we will ask you to tell us more about it. And indeed, the robot is something very interesting, what digitization can do in farming. Mr. Migende, which is your technology? Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. It's nice to be here. Now, what is fascinating, years ago, when I have seen how the land machines, the farming machines are looking, these are rockets that are bringing Sentinel rockets into the space. And it's obviously all what we do with watering, with the Copernicus satellite program, and good KI algorithms, because this is something you can afford, and you have a very positive impact on the environment, on nitrates and the water, and also save productivity. But we can go back to this later on. Now, you have talked about several techniques, and it's looking nice, and it is also something that there are parts that are covered, and I would like to know now what is the status quo and where are the challenges, because you said that, for example, that satellites that everything can optimized, for example, also nutrients, and this would be very interesting for everybody who is listening here or from home. And are there still challenges that we should solve in the future? And in your function at BayWa, what is the situation of digitization for agriculture? And therefore, you have the floor once again. Quickly, BayWa exists since 1923. We giving the farmers all what they need in order to produce. We sell also technique, we also repair it, and these are more or less 4,000 people in different places in south and eastern, in the eastern part of Germany, and we see it also in Africa, and we see every day what is working, what is not working, and we can also recognize some red tapes here, and there's some we are talking about innovation, and therefore years ago we started to invest into smart farming, and we have the biggest company here. We have the Vista GmbH, where we have satellite data for algorithms, and we see a lot what is working and what is not yet working. And Bitkom already said it. Farmers are very curious, they are innovative, but digitalization is concentrated on the first steps, like robots and different apps. We have more e-commerce, and the very interesting things, and this is the important part, economy and ecology. Put them together. This is not there yet. That does have different reasons. I could talk about this for hours, but maybe I can say something even also later on, because even politics has to do still a lot. I'm listening. There is still, there is still free space for it. Mr. Schmal, you already said it. Due to your farm, you are active, you have the practical experience, but for the representation in Hesse, you see what is happening. What is your view? How digital are the farmers in Hesse, and which are the biggest challenges? Well, when we're Germans, and this is obviously also the Hesse, because we always complain when something is not working. You know that I'm living in North Hesse, not far away of Frankfurt, and then when you are going forth and ahead with your car, and you have a cut because you don't have 5G. And then you say, well, this could be improved. But as we have our minister here, I would also say thank you very much here from the regional government. We had 5 million until 2024, and we see there is the will to get better. And yes, the white spots, obviously we try to have a better satellite network. We have smart farming, we talked about and we can also decide up to 2 centimeters, and we can do all this knowing what kind of terrain we have. And this is not working when we this is working only if everybody has the opportunity to use these things. And many of our farming cars have digitization, and especially young farmers, they can't do without, you know. Everything is on a mobile phone, where I had to go to my office in order to see data. My son is just pushing one button and he sees everything, and this is going ahead, and I guess we are on the right track. But there are still things that we can improve, and if we want to have this for the whole part of Germany. What is our minister saying, and what do you see for the farming in Hesse? Now, the situation, we always have still space, and it would be a pity if it wouldn't be like this. And if we wouldn't be there to improve things, then we would do anything. From my point of view, the situation is such that obviously due to Corona, the digital part got even more interest. And with this, we have opportunities also in several points where we can help or get into a dialogue with the citizens, because I see just like you. Our strategy, in the middle of this strategy, we have the human being in every sector, in health, in finance, and this should be for the human being. It's the human being that is in the center of our interest. This is very important for me, and this is obviously also the framework. Where are we staying? What are we doing? The country, we have the 5 million Mr. Schmal talked about, should be used for sustainability projects, and the digital ministry has been conceived that we have the whole of the money really divided at the best manner, but especially obviously with the digitization strategy. And Mr. Schmal is right. If we are not able to bring digitization ahead so that we have a connection everywhere, then we will have a problem here. I have a nice picture, and if you see what happened in the last 3 years, you have a hockey graph, and this shows what we did modernize or build anew in Hesse only for connectivity. Between 20 and 21, more than 5,000 new connection, and this without this we can't have a digital agriculture, and therefore the digital ministry is investing in a special program, and this money is used for the farming, because elsewhere they would say it's not interesting enough. Now 5 million in farming specifically, and 50 million in one program for the rural areas, and then third, more 5G. Then because 5G, you can't have an Internet of Things, and therefore the different machines are not connecting to each other. But we do need this in order to go ahead. These are three aspects: the digital ministry in Hesse, what we are doing in order to develop farming in the future. Having the human being in the center of our heart. I guess this is something very interesting, because this is a huge problem. If Hesse is going ahead, everybody would be happy of this. Now you're looking at Europe. Are there similar discussions at the European level, or where are the challenges and the opportunities? Well, I could say one thing. It's not only one place where you are not connected, but we have also in the south and in the west still some difficulties with connectivity for big countries like Hesse, Rhineland, Palatinate, and the south of Germany. We have this also at my place. Now, I think that at the European level, we discuss things, and as things are discussed in Hesse, this is really a huge challenge for farming, because we have to take with us all the farmers. Mr. Schmal is representing his farm, which is quite big. And we are both, the structure at my place is similar to what we have in Hesse, almost 40,000. And if you have a further 40,000 in Bavaria, in the south, we have a different structure in farming than in the northern or eastern part of our country. And I guess that this is very important in digitization. It's really a challenge, not only the question of a passage from generation to generation, as you described it, but also that it's important how big the whole farm is. And this is important for my colleagues also in the AGRI part, and we shouldn't have the opportunity also to take everybody on board, and this is a challenge. When we are looking at Germany only, then in the European Union we say further challenges. Just an example, in Portugal, 90% of the farms, they have less than 10 hectares. What is small for us is there already something big.
So, now more about the current challenges and this current state in Germany with a strong focus on Hessen. We also heard from Mr. Lins that we have to really get all the farmers on board, that we also have to think about the connected and disconnected farmers, how can we get the disconnected farmers really towards the group of the connected farmers. This is also something the Commission talks about. So for me, it would be now interesting to hear more about like the current state throughout Europe in terms of digitalization of agriculture, and maybe also what is, in the European Commission's perspective, the biggest challenge at the moment.
It's a long question. It might be a long reply. Starting with the challenges, I can only concur with what's already been said by some of the panelists. I think we need to start, first of all, with the idea of connectivity and accessibility. We really need to have, throughout Europe, access to digital infrastructure. It's still, unfortunately, not the case everywhere, and at least not to the level that it's required But this is also why the European Commission is investing or is supporting investment in these areas as part of the Digital Europe program, but also under the Rural Development Program, where we have support for investments in broadband infrastructure. I think another challenge that we have is of course, about people, and it's about the skills of farmers. We need to have farmers that are very much familiar with the use of these new technologies. And to some extent, it's still not yet the case, or at least it's not yet the case throughout the whole of Europe. Again, the Commission and the CAP in particular is very much investing in this through, for instance, advisory services, where we want to address this challenge that is still out there. Maybe moving a little bit longer, but still in terms of the challenges, I think it's also important to speak about the technologies in themselves and the interoperability of some of these technologies or the data. So we are working on this. We're trying to put out a number of legislative pieces out there that will, once is implemented in Europe, will bring about a governance system and regime in terms of digital, and this is also important, but we're still not yet there in terms of some of the different technologies. Another aspect which I think it's also important is, of course, digital is about innovation, and it's about creation of value, and it's about new business models that we want to have out there. So this is also something that for us is still a challenge, because we need to understand what will be the viability of some of these new business models that should come from the fact that part of our farming community will be increasingly supported by digital technologies. But it's also about the business models that should be out there. We also need to have a little bit more knowledge about this. And again, I can elaborate later on if necessary, but it's an area where we are working on, and it's something really important. The other part of your questions were where we are in terms of European and EU in this regard. I cannot elaborate a lot, but as part of the CAP strategic plans, we have actually asked member states to tell us where they are in terms of their digital strategies. They have been asked to outline what are their plans in terms of digital transition in rural areas, but also as regards agriculture sector in itself. We've received the strategic plans. We will soon come up with what we call our observation letters, where we tell about our comments to the member states' plans. And I can already divulge a little bit what we will be saying, because it in a way testifies, reflects to what is the situation in Europe, or at least in the EU. What we find, first of all, is that there is a huge variety in terms of the situations in Europe. Today, we are hearing here a little bit about the experience in Hessen, which is, of course, not representative of the rest of Europe. But there are other Hesses in Europe, but there are also many different situations where it's not at all like Hesse in Germany. So a huge discrepancy in terms of the situation of digitalization in Europe. The other part that we found from what member states have been telling us is actually that there are also very few member states that have actually developed strategies for digitalization in agriculture. I'm very happy to see the document there. It's one of the few. Not everywhere in Europe, unfortunately, we have those. In some member states, we do have strategies. In some member states where we don't have specific strategies for digitalization in agriculture, we have other cross-sectoral strategies which touch upon agriculture, so it's important. What we've also seen as part of the replies of member states to our sort of a request has also been that there is still a huge divide in terms of rural areas and digitalization in agriculture. Some member states are looking at this in a more holistic way. So some member states have rural digitalization strategies, and they have also agricultural digitalization strategies. This is good because it's rather comprehensive. And in a number of member states, on a very sort of a positive note, we actually also see that they are looking not only at issues regarding, for instance, precision agriculture, but they go a little bit beyond that. And they're actually also looking in terms of how can we use digital to make the most of marketing our products. And some member states are also even going a little bit beyond that and looking also at how can we do provision of digital services as part of an overall strategic approach in this area. So a huge number of situations, a lot of ambition in some member states, and still on a less maybe positive note, a lot of work that still needs to be done in a couple of member states, and where I guess we will be working in the next couple of years together.
Okay, yeah, it sounds a bit like a lot of work. Maybe a quick follow-up question to you, also, Mr. Antunes. You mentioned that the European Commission plans or already published some proposals that actually will help, for example, to use data maybe more broadly to make that more efficient. Do you think that they are perfectly aligned, or do you also see some challenges coming from there? And I think Mr. Migende raised that in the beginning, that also sustainability and digitalization are sometimes not thought together. Maybe you can elaborate on that quick question.
I would argue not maybe on a bit differently. Of course, here in Brussels, we work mostly at the macro level. And there I can only say that our different strategies are very much aligned. Digital transition is one of the priorities of this Commission. And of course, digitalization in agriculture is also a priority that we will have as part of this broader agenda. But we also have other agendas, and like the farm to fork strategy, for instance, like the rural vision for the long-term vision for rural areas, where we also see that there is this alignment, or at least this intention on the part of the Commission, that all these different strategies are actually synergistic. For instance, as part of the farm to fork strategy, obviously we are discussing also the precision agriculture, which will help us achieve the sustainability goals that we have as part of the farm to fork strategy. It's about, of course, using of less inputs in agriculture, which is, in a way, an inspirational target for us. And we are also saying that digital can help us get there. As part of the long-term vision for rural areas, for instance, we are saying where we think Europe, or at least the rural areas in Europe, should be by 2040. And an important part of this agenda is actually also the digital transition. We have a number of flagship initiatives where we actually want to see implemented in member states more forcefully, more broadly, a digital transition. So I would say very much that the alignment is there. And I guess I take the opportunity now, because one of the exciting things in terms of this alignment, and which will be in a way a bit more elaborated, is the common space for digital agriculture in the EU. It's something that we are working together very much in the Commission so far. We have had a call for companies to help us put this together. We expect to have a contract in place by end of this year. And by end of this year, we will have what we call a coordination and support action that will translate what are, for us, some of the objectives, or at least what could be the governance underpinning this common data space for agriculture. And it's very much an opportunity that I put out there for the different stakeholders to engage with the Commission, to engage with the member states on how we really want to translate what are some of our broader and macroeconomic goals into specific goals for agriculture as part of this digital agenda. So stay tuned. I invite all of you to contribute to this work, because of course we try to ensure this alignment at the very macro level, but there is now the need to translate this into very specific actions, and this is what we will start doing as of the end of this year, and again together, I hope.
Herr Lins, wie ist denn da?
Mr. Lins, what is the situation in Parliament? Are you satisfied with the alignment of the various legal initiatives, or do you see room for improvement, adjustment here or there, so that agriculture is thought in broader terms? The Commission's initiative, I think, the alignment is on the right track, as you say. But of course, there is always a potential to improve. And I think what Mr. Veltkamp said in his introduction in the Common Agricultural Policy and in the National Strategic Plan, maybe something more could have been done. If I look at the eco schemes in Germany, for instance, well, it's very much focused on extensification. And that's okay. That's not a criticism. It's right that in some areas we have extensification. We need it in some areas. But I also believe, let me speculate, if the eco schemes had been decided at European level and not delegated them to the member states, which was the Parliament's position, by the way, in the mandate that brought us to those negotiations, then certain eco schemes, I think, in the list, in addition to the 7 eco schemes that we adopted in Germany, there would have been more eco schemes. And I think there would also have been eco schemes on digitalization. And that is something I have noticed in our national transposition. So I'm curious when the Commission publishes its observation letter and also gives us a summary at the Parliament, what is written in the strategic plans of the 27 member states. I'm curious about finding out the differences between member states, particularly as compared to the German plan. Mr. State Minister, you have certainly heard with a lot of pleasure that you were praised for your digital strategy in Hessen. You were certainly pleased. You have also software included in the strategy. In many countries, they haven't included software in the strategic plan. So what are you particularly proud of? You mentioned that digital infrastructure, developing the network, plays an important role for you. But what would you perhaps present as best practice in Hessen's strategic plan? Now, in my view, this topic, digitalization, is cross-sectoral. It's a really cross-sectoral topic. And this is what we are going to experience in the future. I will have to experience in the future. So I'm proud because in Hessen we have developed a sector where on the one hand we can steer, control the money, the budget, but on the other hand also develop contents together. And this digital strategy is was not written on my desk at home. Part of it, yes, but we used all resources, all our colleagues, all our departments, and asked them, what are the future topics for you? We took them after this brainstorming, and with all the stakeholders, all those sitting around the table here, we discussed whether these are the future topics for them too. And then again, we had a dialogue with the citizens of Hessen, and then we said, look, these 6 areas are our priorities. This is what we want to achieve until 2030. And these cross-sectoral tasks mean that coordination between the budget and content. And that's something that I would wish that we could achieve that at federal level and at European level, so that in one place, at one table, we can sit together and say, where do we need to get out of these silos? So where do we need to connect these silos to enable cooperation for our future? And I'm pleased that our various departments, we have agreed all on a single pathway to develop the digital technology in the future. Budget and content. Content and finance, that's necessary. and to coordinate that in one place. And it's not about one minister or the other minister gets it better or worse. No, it's about one single future vision, which means digital Hessen where future is at home for the people. And to become more specific, away from the abstract level. You mentioned the farm-to-fork strategy. When I look at digitalization, this is exactly what the economy or what the farming or the food industry needs to do in the future. So use interfaces and cooperate more closely. And this is what we all need to learn. Digitalization is a cooperation model at country level, at European level. And this is where we need to think in European terms. If we develop a cooperation model at European level with a common digital strategy for Europe, cross-sectoral strategy, that would be a pathway where we can really develop the future. That would be my wish. Now, I would go to my left-hand side because we have the representatives from the economy sitting here. First, I would like to give you an opportunity to respond to this briefly, if you wish. Otherwise, I'd like to take a step back, small step back. Any reactions? Yes, I'd like to say a couple of things, says Mr. Schmal. The minister said it's all about the people that you need to convince, who need to implement all this. And when we talked about farm to fork, or the farm to fork strategy, when Mr. Lins said the eco schemes in Germany are not the same as in other European countries. Now, what is very important for me is always to mention that agriculture is in a field of tension. On the one hand, the economy, keep an eye on the economy, and on the other hand, sustainability, achieve sustainability. So there are very high political, societal expectations on us. And we as farming families are consumers too. We are the ones who produce foodstuff. And if farmers don't see the usefulness, they're not going to implement this and not going to do that. So it's very important that you convince the farmers, and I think we've been able to do so until now. But on the other hand, as in agriculture, as we've seen in recent weeks and months, even before this brutal aggression in Ukraine, the cost for input has increased significantly, whether it's diesel or whether it's protein or fertilizer, many other things, energy, everything has become more expensive. And it's very clear that we need to use as little as possible to have a profit at the end of the day. And this can be done digitally. And that's why it's so important that we present it to the farmers. I think we succeeded. I said 80% of the farmers use digital technology in some form. And I think these things will develop further very quickly. The offer is getting broader and broader. And on the other hand, in pesticides, phytosanitary products, we are losing some products. Very few new products are being registered. We also use robots. Robots actually can make a difference between crops and weeds on the one hand, and between weeds and grass on the other hand. So startups develop quite interesting things in that respect. And I say, well, this is the first step. And when the startup develops something that can be implemented in practice, then the farmers are going to use it. So we take a very close look at these developments. I think that's the way forward. And agriculture is very innovative in terms of using these new technologies. Since I have a follow-up question on this very quickly. Investments. So the investments in technology are very cost-intensive. Nevertheless, for farmers currently, it's very interesting to do so. Could you perhaps explain why farmers decide to make these investments, or what they would need additionally to get more uptake of these investments across the country? Let me give you two examples. One is precision farming, GPS on your tractor, and my colleague here could perhaps say more about this. Many of the tractors which are registered today in Germany already have the system. Of course, that has cost in buying the equipment, but if the farmers wouldn't see the usefulness of these systems, it wouldn't be a success in the whole chain. And just to give you one simple example, I'm a practitioner the new modern tractors that we use on our pastures, if there is a technical defect or an error, today from the workshop, from the garage, wherever they are, they can make a diagnosis, and the technician, the mechanic who comes out, knows there's something wrong with the distribution system, could be this or that spare parts, or even practical matters in your economic life. So I can quickly repair my tractor and make it run again. One other example, I mentioned robots in animal husbandry, steering system, control systems. Of course, such a milking robot is more expensive. If you calculate in terms, it's 1.5, 2 cents more expensive in production because of maintenance contracts and technology, etc., etc. But I can tell you, if you look at how it works, on the one hand, you need fewer people, particularly in the east of Germany, where some skilled workers are difficult to find. And on the other hand, that we found on our own farm, the animals who go to the milking robot several times a day, they produce 4 liters of milk more than the ones we milked in the shed. So there is an economic gain. And without all the other things that technology can do, collecting data, compressing data, and processing data, we haven't even mentioned that. It's certainly an investment, and as you said, for smaller companies it might be a bit more difficult. Then you have companies who can offer this technology for rent. And but I think in many areas digitalization has already progressed a lot. Mr. Migende, would you like to respond? Yes, I'd like to step back. I need to go back into practice. So don't forget precision agriculture, precision farming in the taxonomy, so that we don't have the same fate as in the trade of solar modules. So the trade counseling for precision agriculture should also be part of the taxonomy. That would be very important. So as I said earlier on, that the really interesting applications, precision farming, that we still don't have enough of those. There are many inquiries among farmers where the farmers say why, and we always make the experience the most important point is that these systems do not really function well in practice. The data don't flow.
Yeah, that's core. Oder Silos, ganz wichtig.
Or silos, as you said, because the economy made a lot of mistakes, businesses made a lot of mistakes, everyone developing their own thing. AGRI, for instance, in Germany is one where competitors agreed on the same data formats. But if I come back to precision fertilizing for non-farmers, that the plants only get the fertilizer it needs in the coming days to be able to grow, this is exactly the solution to comply with the fertilizer regulation. Also, these red areas to alleviate the situation a little so that you have optimized production, although you cannot use as much nitrogen. Now, from an economic point of view on the farms, for 50 hectares, if you have a control system, it works fine. And if there are other conditions, even starting at 20 hectares, and these are sizes that we have in Baden-Württemberg, in Bavaria, so you can use that. In recent weeks, or rather, my key accounts tell me that farmers see these advantages, but currently they have other things to do. We have so much confusion in Germany. Where is agriculture going? What are the overall conditions for farming in Germany? The country is asking itself fundamental questions. Do I need to invest in a shed for better animal welfare? What about rearing pigs? This is not political polemics. It's just the feedback I get from our practitioners. The second point, most of the farmers want to have systems which simply work. They don't want to have island solutions, an app here and an app there. They don't want to have a farm management information system on their farm, plus enter all the data in the state platform. They want an integrated system. And all those listening or watching and know something about software programming, software is easy to get at low cost and at good quality if you use standardized software and if it's scalable. But we have 16 states in Germany. 16 times fertilizer regulation, 16 times various ambitions, not so much in the ministries, but rather at the level below. We're getting crazy. It's like herding cats. We checked for Hessen on the 17th of March was the last edition on the Internet of data that we need for the fertilizer regulation. But the first fertilizer has already been applied. So we have some positive examples. Saxony, Thuringia, who also start creating clusters, also a group around Lower Saxony. But it's very difficult to get there, and particularly for farmers, bureaucratization, red tape, restrictions, a lot of conditions. Now it's been postponed, the phytosanitary products. That's where the farmers need these systems, but 16 states with 16 different approaches. Not possible. So in the global digital farming scene, everybody avoids Germany for that reason, because we cannot agree. There are two different structures in Germany. That's a fact. The structures are different. That's why we have 3 clusters: south of Germany, north of Germany, and east of Germany. We also have farmers in Hessen who work in several states, not only in Hessen, same stress. So I'm really sorry for being a party pooper, but it's a real problem. If I understand you correctly, so you would wish from our politicians that they give you more legal certainty, perhaps by unifying or harmonizing legislation in various areas. Yes, exactly, that would be it. So the legal interpretation is different. The calculation methods are different, even in the Excel lists put online where farmers need to fill in. They're not transparent. We don't know how they calculate the formulas. I could talk about it for hours. And we talk to the ministries and one-to-one and in the various states. That's important. But this is one topic, one issue. And very important to push this topic in Germany. If farmers invest money, are innovative, then they should also get help in bureaucracy, particularly in the red areas in Germany. Difficult topic, I know, for the EU. But that would be an encouragement, and then we get rolling, because that's what farmers need. Farmers have no problem with sustainable agriculture and environmental protection, but it needs to be feasible. And digitalization can help, and the farmers also need to see an advantage. Those who have the courage and time, people in the center, absolutely right, to deal with these technologies. They should be rewarded. Now, before I look into the future and into the possibilities, State Minister, would you briefly like to react to this? Well, the standardization and simplification of authorization procedure is a core task of politicians and will remain so. Since you asked me the question, what is Hessen doing? I'm very pleased that we are the only state in Germany that managed to accelerate the authorization procedures for mobile communication. And if I look at agriculture, here again, we need to take a close look. Precision fertilizing, but also generally to generalize and unify. You can do that in digitalization by making the same software available. That's the way we have opted for in Hessen. We've made the software available to all municipalities without license fee to digitalize their processes. And I think that's the right track that we need to do, that we need to go in Germany, but also at European level, so that we have standardization to improve the effectiveness also. Data sovereignty is also part of that, and to have European independence in that respect. So that's another glimpse into the future. Standardization, harmonization, simplifying authorization procedures, doing it, not only talking about it. Mr. Lins, now we heard Europe also needs to make adjustments, maybe set the right standards, and harmonize the legal framework. Where do you see the future? Where do you see this is the responsibility of the EU to support the farmers and help the farmers? The problem of interfaces, that's one area where in the ideal case we should have a European solution. The countries certainly also have their tasks to do, but I think the federal government, whatever the color of the coalition, always tends to say we are big enough in the European framework, we are the largest member states, we can do that much better ourselves. That's the general attitude that you see in Berlin quite often. And I think this is something we need to shed if we want to make progress on this topic so that we can develop standards, because the former Commissioner Günther Oettinger said, who has the data has the power. So if we could solve that issue, I don't want to say that I have the solution now or to offer, but that would take us a decisive step forward.
Your opinion about that? What is actually maybe also the vision of the European Commission regarding standardization in that sector, and what can data-driven solution do in the future?
I think the future is bright and the future is digital. I think for us, we've been very much concerned and working a lot to make sure that we have a framework and a regulatory framework for that matter that is in Europe fit for purpose for the challenges that we see coming in the next couple of years. So we've been very busy, like I said, maybe at a very macro level, but I think it's important to have this because we cannot build anything if we don't have those. So we've been working on digital governance. We've this year put out, I think, 3 important pieces of legislation, which are now with the co-legislators. The Data Act, the Data Governance Act, the Digital Markets Act. All of these are very important pieces of a regulatory framework that needs to be in place if we need to have this agenda going forward and accelerating in the next couple of years. I've already also mentioned the common European data space for agriculture, which is something that I would definitely like to emphasize, which will be important for us to work together and will be an important part of the architecture that we need to have in place if we want to have digitalization in agriculture going forward. This will be key. This is something that we will be working already this year, starting this year. And it's something that I would definitely, again, invite stakeholders like yourselves to engage with. And I think as part of this common European data space, maybe we will need to see also a little bit what is there necessary that we still need to do if you want to create even further value. Because I keep also emphasizing this, it's very important that, of course, the digital in agriculture is going to allow us to align with our sustainability goals, but also with some competitiveness goals for the reasons that have already been discussed here. But I think it's also an important part to realize that data creates value, and we need to be able to reap this value. And for this, there are sort of a very humdrum kind of areas that we need to still put in place, like, for instance, contractual arrangements, like data ownership, like looking more broadly at what could be also digital business models for agriculture. These are some of the things that perhaps are not so sexy, but it's definitely part of the agenda that we see going forward, where we still need to have a little bit more, starting maybe with evaluations. We have a voluntary code of conduct in terms of data sharing on digitalization in agriculture, which we have some experience there, but we possibly need to evaluate this. And as part of all this work that probably will be coming into fruition in the next 1 to 2 years, then we will need to see whether there is still the need for us to come with legislation or not. To be continued.
Maybe a quick follow-up to that, because I think you mentioned the common data space. I think it's kind of a buzzword also here in the EU bubble, because everyone wants to have it. No one does actually know at the moment how it should look like. Maybe you can further elaborate on that. What can we expect, and what is maybe the key objective behind it? Because you mentioned that it should create value, but what does it actually mean?
Well, good question, and not something that I would be able to elaborate, because it's something that we want to see coming not just as a decision of the Commission, but actually as work that is taken up by the Commission, but also farmers, but also industry, and by also member states. And by this common European data space for agriculture, basically we want to be sure that when we create data, and when we create data, we need to share data, we need to be sure that there is trustworthiness in how we go about doing this. So we possibly need to create a framework, a regulatory framework, laws maybe, to be seen, how we can do this for that when an industry sells a product to a farmer, and the farmer, by using that product, creates data, and that data is sent back to the industry maybe, but maybe to a company that will collect this data and will create a service out of this data, that all of this is done in a secure environment. And that all of this is also possible to be done not only in Hesse, but in Hesse and in Malta and in Portugal and in Finland and everywhere in Europe, so that we can pool all of this data that is being created out there, so that we can then have services. In a way, it's, for very simplistic reasons, it's what companies like Google do. They have applications, and every time we use an application from Google, they collect data from us on how we go about in our daily lives. And then they use this knowledge to make services. So they provide us, for instance, with an application that says, okay, if I go now from here to my office, back into my office, how long will it take me if I take the metro, if I walk, or whatever. For the agriculture, we also need this. Farmers will be using machinery, will be using tools that will create this data that has value, and it has value because some company somewhere in Europe will be able to collect this information and create a service, normally a novel service, something that is innovative. I cannot tell you what this will be, I can only imagine. And by creating this, it's a new economic added value that we put into the economy, because someone will be willing to pay for this. And hopefully a lot of us will be able to pay for this in Europe, but also outside Europe, because we want to continue to be leaders in agriculture, but also leaders in digital agriculture, which is, of course, a big part of what the future will look like.
Minister, what would be important for you if we have this data room for agricultural data? Connectivity at this point, because we have to work in a manner that we have this the open source data banks so that you can bring these points together. I guess this is the very important point, because there we have the opportunity to get into a network and have further options also for the future. And what would you like to take away for farming in Hesse? Well, we do have different activities. The whole process from the beginning to the end have to be digitized. This has to be the future. This is one thing. Do not have barriers, and we, apart from that, we have a digital infrastructure that is giving us the opportunity to work digitalized in agriculture. Now I'm going to the other side. Well, yes, I was thinking about it when we discussed it. You were saying it should be unified not only in Germany, but then we were talking also about Europe. And we in Germany do have a problem with this. Mr. Lins was already indicating it. Mr. Oettinger said, who has the data has the power. Well, this question, who is taking the data, what is happening to my data, this is something that is very important for us in Germany. And there are models in Germany. I'm looking in the Netherlands, smaller, obviously, than in Germany, but it's very innovative as far as animal farming is concerned, and they managed to have the data in the whole country in a common collection, and obviously the farmers can, up to a certain point, say and decide what will happening with their data, because what will be done with the data, and you have to look forward. You need to have solutions, and this has to do something with the fact that it has to be unified so that it can be used by everybody. Because me as a president of the farmers representation, you were talking about fertilizer. It's in many cases not feasible. How should I do this? And who is working on the tractor needs to know what is feasible on that piece of land. And you can't ask it from everybody. So it has to be digitalized, and it's very important that you have bundles so that the farmers can say their word, and there are good approaches that we can find all over Europe. And now, what are you thinking about this data room? It's a very positive example. The Sentinel data are free. And I do know a lot of farmers who make their own cards with it. And the maps and the AI models that we need, not what is the plant needing now, but in the next few days. This is a little bit more difficult. And there are so many important things you've said. And for example, as far as the mobile network, and that there is some financing. I guess the glass is half full, but we do need to have the courage to speak about the difficult things, and we should also discuss how can a digital farming in Europe be founded. And we see this it's also an economic question, and me as a citizen, a taxpayer, and digitalization should not only be paid by the citizens, it should also an interest to invest in this kind of field. And this would mean that we have different competencies. What is the state doing, like online law to access? It's about administration, but not that somebody is offering fertilizers. Connectivity has to be there, has to be right. These are the important topics. And we should also think, what can we do with this digital industry or develop this industry? This is a European topic. Who is doing what is the question. And the economy is open as far as data protection is concerned. This is not a problem. The problem is to have a return on investment in all this. This is the very first point. And as long as we do not do, if we do not have this, then this is not working. And most of the farmers are part of this. And we have the European law, the German law. And we have very important approaches here, and therefore we don't have any problem with this. But we have to sit at this table and discuss it because it's free. We have the state, and we have to see how we can go ahead. We should not work one against the other, but we do work together. And that would be our advantage also versus the US. We do need a European way, and we would like even to do more, but nobody called us in order to know how important this might be for safety in the food field. And in the last year, we had an algorithm used, and with Sentinel data and with the algorithms, we will see it, and this will be very small for the different crops they are normally delivering. Sunflowers is not as much our favorite, but we are working on it, and we would like to give it out at 0. But this is something very, very important if you, for example, like to count it for Ukraine. And when we think about it, and we should be able to help, not to have this ecological part against the economic part. And what you already said, it's very important. You need not to see only 22, but also 23. And I'm optimist that digitalization can be one part that will help to make farm to fork. We have a little bit of time, and in this case I'm continuing because I do have a lot of questions open. And I would like to have a follow-up question because you already talked about the different structures, what you have in mind. Could you mention some other aspects from, let's say, from a political point of view, because you were talking, is there a lack of transfer in knowledge, and are there other structures where somebody in the political field can create something? I asked for so many things. I would like to hear what politics is asking from us from the economic part. I would like to ask that we have a digitalization that has to be done together. Walk the talk, yes. And what would that be like? We have done it. We have written how economy 4.0 has to be done. And the digital economy is something we have discussed. Where are our goals in 2030? Where do we want to stand? And we are talking about specialized people. We do need these people. We can give the framework condition. We can invest in this in different institutions, but also bring out programs. But we do need the economic. The digital transformation had different facets. We had innovations, good ideas, startups. 4.0 is working differently. There we need to have new models too. This is something what politics and the economics have to do together. And we already said we do need well-prepared people that will stay in Germany and in Europe. And I got a question that is exactly going into this direction. We see this in many sectors that we don't have enough well-prepared people. The question comes from Professor Hornkammer, and he is asking, there are many faculties that have been closed down as far as agriculture is concerned. What can you do in order to have these universities open once again, in order to have specialized people for the future? There too, I can give an idea only if I give something positive. And I guess that many, when we talk about agriculture, it's only working on the farm. But I need to have a knowledge in IT. The tractor is not only first or second step, but it is an IT instrument that is huge, and that might also be fun, because I have the satellites and I can see where am I with my piece of land in Europe, and how can I dose how much of fertilizer or else I do need. And this with this we should have a new many of them have fun with digitization, and we should make this clear that I have a different offer for the future. This is something that we can do all together, Mr. Schmal. When Mr. Schmal and me meet, and then we look what the young people are doing, and then ask them how much digitization do you need. Without digitization, the agriculture in the future is not funny anymore. Well, this is a motivation, and maybe I would even like to go in agriculture, because I'm really surprised about the developments, because I would also to have this old image, and therefore I'm happy that we heard there is a whole industry behind it. How do you see the problem of specialized and well-trained people? Well, as we already said, it's not a single problem for agriculture. I do not know the whole situation in Hessen, but I'm coming from a region where we have a huge, maybe the hugest lack in the whole country, and thus even in during the Corona pandemic. And the situation is similar also in Hesse, but I would like to add something more. I guess that in some of the political part, we do have the debate, is technology helping in order to have a transformation in agriculture, but not only, or is this against human beings and against the animals? I see this and hear this in part in the European Parliament, and I guess this is a discussion that we should bring to an end. Mr. Schmal also did this, and I'm grew up like this, and I would like to see and hear what he can offer as well-being for the animal thanks to technology. Is something you can't compare with the situation we had 20 or 30 years ago for milk farmers. And I'm convinced that this is something not everybody is aware of, and probably we have some cows more, but they are better off than those who were on the farm 20 or 30 years ago. And what do you need from politics in order to improve the situation? I think we did what we had to deliver, and I guess we should try all together to find a way, because the interests are very differentiated when I said it. Who has the data has the power. Obviously, this is connected to decisions where we can answer the question, who has a good business model and who doesn't. And if I'm talking about the different points, this is a typical family company. They do not have everything from one producer, and this has to be something that is easy, and we have interest behind that. Well, I would like to offer the whole system. You can take everything here from me, but we have to maintain also competitiveness, and the economic part has to give signals. And quickly, a follow-up question, and would examples be helpful, like Mr. Schmal told us, in order to explain that technology is not only a roboter where the world is squeezing us, where you can also create value? Might that be helpful in order to use these technologies and the acceptance? I guess yes, because the farmers are doing this in the whole of Europe, and you see that people do know less and less about agriculture, but they want to have a word on it. And in the last few years, we had the impression we have 80 billion farmers, and they do exactly how much they need for fertilizers or nutrients, and how you can agree with your neighbors. Open your farm, show those people what is happening and what the daily life is like, and how technology is helpful for the well-being of animals, and to use less fertilizers or protection. And I guess in the actual crisis, this is a very important topic, and I would like to talk about food security. And this afternoon, when I had the Ukrainian Minister for Agriculture in my office, that they don't have anything, no fuel and no seeds. And in part in the European Union, we have to try to generate these crops. And in my eyes also next year. And then I do think that we have something very important to do, and that we, together with technology and digitization, these are words that many don't like to hear, and this might be coming back to the political debate. We
help to reach that goal, to reduce maybe the fear of these kind of technologies? How can they share maybe these kind of best practices throughout Europe?
Not sure I have the answer, but what I can tell is that it's definitely something that for us it's also important to address. And I've actually from the beginning noticed this at the start of my intervention. It's something that we feel it's important to address, and it's something that we are trying to address. As part of the common agriculture policy, we are putting in place these advisory services where farmers can access what is some of the knowledge that is out there, that is in terms of new technologies also. So this is something that it's there as an opportunity for farmers. We are also developing the agricultural knowledge and innovation systems, which is also another hook that can help us in these interventions, and how we can make sure that at least farmers are more knowledgeable and they understand what are the opportunities that are out there. We are also very specifically developing this new tool on use of nutrients, which will be something very straightforward and easy to use on the part of farmers, because it is an important part of what they need to be doing. So this is also another part that we are working on. And we haven't touched upon it, but I think it's also important that there is also sort of more broad ongoing debate and work that we are undertaking, which is about research and innovation at large in these areas. Also, as part of our programs, and the Horizon Europe there will be an important tool, we are also working with industry, but also farmers, on how can we generate more and better knowledge that will help all of us. And we are spending, or at least financing, quite a lot of instruments and projects that will help us in this regard. And I think by having these sort of different hooks in place, sort of the broad research aspects and what are important things to consider. The second part, which is sort of a development of very straightforward and hands-on tools. And finally, this opportunity that will be out there for kind of a technical assistance for farmers. I guess it will, to a large extent, help us move on in terms of this agenda. But it shouldn't also just be only for the Commission. Part of this will also be for industry. And it's something that we need to have a bit of discussion on how industry themselves can help farmers be part of this agenda in terms of how they develop their products and also by, I guess, listening to what are the needs of the farmers in the first place. Because sometimes there is the tendency for us to very brilliantly think about a problem and find a solution. But in this case, we need to understand what are the problems and then go and talk to the farmers. How do they perceive this problem before we actually start developing what are some of these solutions in terms of technologies, be it services also, or any other things that we might want to develop. And I must say also, I think there is also a role for industry to help in terms of developing the skills of farmers by offering this also maybe as part of a package of products when they sell a product. It's also, I think, important for this agenda.
Ja, mit Blick auf die Zeit sind wir auch jetzt.
I'm looking at my watch and we are already at the end. We have very interesting questions in the last 1.5 hours. We had the opportunities to see the different parts of it, and digitalization and technology are important, but the human being is part of it, so that everybody is on board and that we need the right infrastructure in order to keep up with all the potentials we have. This was a very dynamic panel, and I would have been able to talk even longer. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for being here. To you, Mr. Antunes and Mr. Lins, Mr. Schmal. And thank you for being here, for having been here today. Now, we are at the end, and this gives us the opportunity to give the word to our minister, and you have the floor. Quickly. I would like, first of all, say thank you for moderation and for those who discussed with us, to those who participated, who asked questions. But this was a very interesting discussion. And there are 3 take-home messages that are important for everybody. First, connectivity in the sense of data connection, but also connectivity in the digital infrastructure. This is something we do need for agriculture in the future. The next point, the second point, is new business models. What does this mean? We do need our European way for digital agriculture, and there we need innovation and sustainability. We have economy, ecology, and social part, and this we do need for the future of agriculture. And in the new business models, we should not imitate other people. We should have our independence, and we can find this way if we take people on board. On the one hand, when we see what do the people need from farm to fork in order to see how this digital farming will look like, and then probably also to motivate them to have specialized people, or even in the big IT and pharma companies. Connectivity, new business models, and
therefore I'm happy that we have had the Digital Agriculture Roundtable today here in the heart of Europe in Brussels, and thank you very much that you have been our guests.
Ja, vielen lieben Dank nochmal an Sie, Frau.
Thank you very much, Minister, for these nice ending words and obviously also the key learnings. We will think about it, what the future will bring for us. Now, at this point, I would like also say which will be the next meetings tomorrow on the 23rd at 1 p.m. We have the global supply chains and probably also agriculture is hit by this. And then we also have on the 28th Europe after the elections. Malta has voted, so please keep up with these meetings. Have a nice evening and see you soon.